Welcome to Why the Long Face? Two old friends lifting the lid on mental health over a beer with author and psychiatrist Paul Keedwell and business consultant and so-called comedian Ollie Turnbull.
Hello all and welcome to Why the Long Face, a podcast exploring mental health, and we're nearly at the end of season 4, which those of you who have been listening to us will know has been about our good friend Ashley Pollock, who has shared with us a number of audio diary clips that he has gone through with his life coach Pete, and we have further analysed as it takes him through a journey that he had end of last year to the beginning of this year 2022 about going through a high and a low, which could be categorised as a bipolar episode. Last week we dealt with the crash. And as you might imagine and maybe hope, there's a slight morbid of optimism to this one, although we did have some great learnings from the last episode. I'm joined, as ever, by Dr. Paul Keedwell. Hello, Paul.
Hello there.
And Ash is actually physically in the same building as Paul again this week. Ash, are you well?
I'm good. Nice to be back again.
It is lovely to be able to see you virtually. Next time, maybe all three of us will be in the same building.
Oh, that'd be good.
There are... yeah.
A little trip to the local afterwards.
Oh, go on then. If we get all our work done, gentlemen. There are a few clips in this one, 3 I think, taken quite close together in terms of time, following a sort of 2-3 week period of low that we discussed last time. I've called my notes A Better Place, and there's a lot of reflections and processing that Ashley goes through with the help of Pete, a very skilled life coach. So I guess, gentlemen, the best thing would be just to dive in and hear how it felt as Ashley came out of his low. So let's play the tape.
Hi, my name's Ashley. For the last 12 years, I've said I used to have bipolar.
Hi, my name's Peter. I'm a life coach, and I'm Ash's life coach.
So, Pete, episode 7,
Yep.
We've been on this journey using these audio notes that I happened to record that captured this sort of narrative arc of a bipolar episode. And the last episode was pretty full on, pretty intense.
Pretty punchy.
Pretty punchy.
We went to some good depth, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I'm in a good place now. So it was good to reflect on some of those feelings. But listening back as well, I realised I was talking about really dark thinking, running away, disappearing, standing on cliffs.
And interestingly enough, sounding pretty congruent and pretty stable when talking about it. Yeah, there was some lethargy and a distinct difference in energy, but still very aware, which is what we've all 4 of us on this series have all noted, that you were very aware as you were processing these things.
Yes, there is this commonality going through all of this, which I think comes back to the tools. And hopefully that's a learning for someone that's listening, is by taking a proactive approach with things like meditation and breath work and journaling, it gives you a framework for when you face these challenges.
Right. Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
So, the last episode was kind of covering the first 2 weeks of the low, really.
Yep.
And so in this episode, I think we're going to get more into reflection.
Yeah, and we're covering quite a few audio notes here, aren't we?
Yeah.
We've got 5 on our list to cover, which is spanning a period of like 2.5 weeks. So yeah, let's dive in.
Let's dive into the first one. One of the other points I was reflecting on yesterday that came up was a concern of the danger of the impact of my ideas. I think that thinking got pretty extreme because you can only be yourself.
So what I hear here is an awareness of the danger of the impact, but also an acceptance that at some level you can only be yourself, or actually not at some level, at a fundamental level, you can only be yourself. Can you tell us more about what you hear yourself saying here?
Yeah, there's this shift. I'm still dealing with the same things at home of having lethargy, being tired, not being able to work on things. In reflecting on the impact that I've had on others, this recording sounds very considered, but I remember at the time I felt a lot of pain about impact on other people, a lot of guilt. And I also wasn't able to communicate it. So I knew I was keeping people in the dark. I was trying not to.
Yep.
I reached out and left a few voice notes. But it made me feel pretty crap about myself. So this audio note is reflecting on that, and I agree with that now. I didn't intend to go out and hurt anyone, and actually now I'm better. I know that those people got a lot of positivity from the experience. There were some challenges over paying people, and it took a bit of time to tidy things up, but I think in conclusion it was net positive, whereas in this moment I'm feeling that I'm net negative in my impact on others.
Interesting. Yeah, so the perception is maybe got a negative slant on it.
Yep.
I think you used the term, I don't really agree with it, but approaching things from with a broken mind, I think you said in one of our last chats, in one of our last episodes. Yeah. And it seems it's more negative than it is.
Yes. Yeah. I think this is the point I made last time, that looking after yourself and not jumping to conclusions would be a good idea, although it's easy enough to say that. I think when you're in a ruminating state, it's very hard to really keep away from where's my place in the world, what's the impact that I've had on others.
To my mind, it's almost like if you had an absolute rigorous set of tools that you just religiously did, breathwork, meditation, no matter what, it's just so drummed in that even in a dip you still do them. It would potentially it would even out the bumps potentially. But do you think that is doable, all things considered?
I think it was around this time, I'm answering the question in a roundabout way, that I got a bit tired of meditating. So I was doing it religiously. Now I'm better. I'm not doing it every day. Okay. And I don't think I should be doing it every day, because I think if something becomes too regimented for me, it starts to lose its impact.
Right.
But you mentioned about Guns N' Roses.
Yeah, that's
I was on a walk, and just listening to damn meditative music all the time can drive you a little bit.
Yeah, man, you can only put up with so much Enya.
So I remember going on a walk, and I really got caught. It was one track, Sweet Child of Mine.
Yeah.
And there was one day I was in bed, having a bad start to the day, and I just couldn't get up. And I just got really angry with this situation, and I put on Sweet Child of Mine, cranked it up to full volume, jumped up, jumped around the room, jumped in the shower, just got loads of energy going, and I felt great.
Yeah, right.
So, yeah, I don't think it's always about zenning into a situation.
Yeah.
I think you can zen into reacting and doing the opposite as well.
Yeah.
What was the next one?
What's the next one? The next one is 9th of April, isn't it? And we were listening to it earlier, and we said frustration was sort of the title.
Yeah, let's go into this one.
I haven't got much energy at the moment, so I'm getting quite frustrated that I can't make decent progress, particularly on the business, but also Justine is sorting out the house for visitors, and I just have limited capacity still. It's been 3 fucking weeks or something. So I'm getting quite tired and quite frustrated. Justine's a saint. How she keeps going forward with positivity.
So what I hear here is an awareness and a lot of frustration in the limited capacity and not having much energy. What do you remember looking back at this now, listening to this?
Yeah, me saying it's been 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So I had this theory, and I don't know if it plays out this time, but I remember in my 20s it did generally run true, which was the length of time of my high, if you tripled it, would be the length of my low.
Right.
And when I was in my 20s, it was very clear. It'd been like a week or 2 or 2 weeks or 3 weeks or a month. And then, so a month would be like 3 months of being low or something like that. It's pretty intense. The thing that scared me a bit this time was I didn't know what the high was. I could hear in these audio notes, which, by the way, at this kind of time, I listened back to every audio note I'd made in a year and a half, which gave me a fascinating picture of my life.
What type of picture did it give you?
That I had been on quite an adventure There'd been a lot that had happened, a lot of exciting stuff. So where was the line between high and low, between mania and normality, my version of normality? And I think by this time I could see that the gardening business had been entirely logical. There wasn't anything brackets crazy about it.
Yeah.
And that really the sort of extreme or the hypermania was around that time of whatever episode it was when I was making 4 bits of music in 4 days. I could see that at this point. But still, I was like, I'm still not able to do things. It's been 3 weeks. How much longer is this going to go on? I knew that it would end, but I still felt pretty bleak and frustrated. And I can hear that in this recording. So, yeah, when you're weeks into this thing, or again in my 20s, months into this thing, and it just never looks like it's going to end, and each morning you're waking up, and I started to get a routine in the morning and in the evening. I remember around this time I figured out that to have my phone next to my bed with this particular meditation exercise on it, to have my shoes next to the bed and a shirt if I wanted to get up in the night, I started to put some frameworks in.
I remember talking
just
about this.
to have some control.
Right.
And don't forget, all the way through this, again, my son is going to school, I'm dropping him to school, I'm still functioning.
Yeah.
I just, it's almost like an out-of-body experience of looking at this person who I'm sure to lots of people who didn't know me would have seemed perfectly fine.
Yep.
But just not being myself and being still aware of that.
And what was it that the control that you were seeking, as you said, with the shoes by the bed and things like that? What benefit does that control give you in that state?
One thing we haven't talked about, which had happened since the beginning, is this time I had a lot more anxiety than before. And so it was a way of controlling anxiety by having something to just grab hold of that I knew was kind of there. Probably 3 weeks in, the anxiety had gone down, but still there was an anxiousness about, I'm a dad, I'm in my 40s, I need to be paying the mortgage. You know, these big topics, these life topics sat continually there alongside me getting better. So the reality was, even when I got better, and even if we go to today, right, we're in July, I've had bits and pieces of work, but I still haven't solved the work challenge. I'm on the case. I've been headhunted for a job now. I've got my CV together. I'm pretty clear on what my value is. Great.
Yeah.
But it has taken this long, and I think at this point I'm aware it's going to take a long time. And so even when I get brackets better, I'm still not going to have solved the key things. And so that balancing. I think maybe the rituals, speaking to you, meditating was as much about getting comfortable with who I was and how I'd move forward, as well as mental health stuff.
Yeah, great.
What was the next one?
Next one is pointlessness on the 11th of April.
I've got it listed as pointlessness. Let's see. I'm not sure it is actually pointlessness, but let's see what it is.
Hopefully not, if we're listening to it.
I did feel that I was a bit lifted. So I don't think this is down as much as that state I've had before about not giving a shit. And also, maybe it's a sort of feeling of pointlessness. And I was looking for all these photographs of myself yesterday. That sounds very self-absorbed, doesn't it? Just looking at who I am and just not sort of liking who I am or what I've been, or just stupid in so many ways. I think I'm a nice person who's done things for people, who's looked after people, who's had a positive impact in the world on a smaller level. But so many ideas and so much energy exerted to basically have built no financial security, and just thinking realistically that moving forward from here, how much financial dependency can Justine have on me? What is, being more cautious or realistic? What can be expected of me?
There's a couple of big themes that I hear there. One I know about, obviously, from our journey together anyway, but I think the new one here is an awareness of not liking yourself, so getting quite down on yourself. You even use the word stupid. That's a bit harsh, even for you, mate. And also then this growing awareness of what is shifting to then this concern around what financial contribution have you made, how much can Justine depend on you, and almost like this shrinking back from the relationship.
Yes. The other thing I'm hearing is if we go back to episode 1 and 2, months before I made any of these decisions, the way I'm talking here is quite similar.
Oh yeah, in what way?
Well, I'm talking about place in the world, decision making,
Yep.
achieving financial security.
Yep.
So I'm talking about these bigger life themes now. As I said in the last clip, which was kind of 3 days earlier, each day I'm still having good days, bad days. I'm still not able to function as I would be. But the way I'm talking here is I'm stepping up a level above that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, this stuff will sort itself out, but I've still got these bigger things I need to address.
Right.
So this doesn't sound like depressive analysis. This sounds like I'm a 42-year-old man and the startup hasn't worked. It wasn't illogical. Well, I say the startup hasn't worked. You know, we were when I came out of this, we were selling stuff. It was ticking over.
Yeah.
But the vision I had of this
The
scaling
volume.
startup.
Yeah, right.
Again, that's funny now because having got better and having figured out, right, I need to find a way of getting paid well for what I do, we've made a few tweaks with the gardening business from a business to consumer model to a B2B model, and we're making some really good progress, actually working much less intensively, almost taking it easier as opened up. That's the route.
Yeah, being in flow.
When I look at it today, there's loads of paths that have opened up.
Yeah, that's right.
It was probably a couple of weeks after this, even though I'm still struggling each day, that I started reaching out to my network here in Ibiza about work opportunities. And I spoke to someone who has a big company back in Germany, and he said, happy to help. Have you got a CV? Because we've got an HR department. I hadn't done a CV for 20 years. And I said, yeah, sure, I'll get that to you next week. So I've still got this kind of, even though I'm not able to fully function, I'm prepared to kind of put deadlines in and start to strive towards things. And so those first few steps are happening here.
One of the things that I picked up on here is there's a lot of open-ended questions, you know, like, and one of the interesting things I've noticed in our relationship is, and this is partly also my learning as a coach, because, you know, I think a good coach is always learning, right? Like, and I definitely try to learn. And you have a lot of open-ended questions in a lot of your thinking, you know, and it has been easy for me to go like, oh, there's a negative slant on that one. Whereas what I understand now is you're not necessarily seeing it that way. Is that right?
Again, I don't think this is mental health discussion. I think this is points I've been reflecting on for the last few years.
Right. Yeah.
Going right back to a couple of years before COVID.
Yeah.
It's reality. Justine has done a corporate career, gone up the ladder, had a secure income that's increased, whereas I've had the passionate, driven, creative career that I've made work and I've made a living, but I haven't grown my income despite my best intentions.
Yet.
Yeah, well, that's what's happening now. That's what's really exciting now. This experience has catapulted me off the back of it into a place where I completely get that.
Right.
So there are these open-ended questions. Now, I didn't record these audio notes to do this podcast. These audio notes were for me to listen back to.
Totally.
So I'm throwing these questions at a wall to give myself time to think about them, or just to say them.
Right.
To get them out.
Yeah. Right.
Rather than just keeping them trapped in my head. And I think that was really
great.
Good in this ruminating phase, just to get stuff out.
Totally.
Not to just spin round and round and round.
Yeah, totally. And that's the interesting thing, right? Like, you didn't know that your life coach is going to be listening to these, like, audio notes, the earlier ones at least, right? These ones, I guess, yeah. But, and I think that's the interesting thing, right? But we have to have an avenue for getting this stuff out. You know, it's when it goes round and around that's the issue.
Okay, fantastic. So lots to go through again. Great questions and interventions from Pete. Loved the Enya gag. versus Sweet Child of Mine did absolutely make me chuckle out loud. I'm afraid, Doctor, this Enya is actually causing me more angst than actually did when I started. So I think there were about three clips there. First thing,
so we just lost a load of Enya fans.
Oh God, have we?
I can live with that.
Everything in moderation.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
I mean, Orinoco Flow's a classic, gentlemen.
That's true.
But
that's true.
Yeah. So diving into the audios, it was nice to see that it wasn't a sort of a really sort of violent bounce back, but a sort of gentle understanding of what had happened and a floating back to normality. How did it seem from a clinician's perspective, Paul?
Yeah, I mean, it certainly felt like a gradual process. I was struck. I've put down a comment here about the difference between being sort of disappointed in yourself about some of the things hadn't worked out, some of your projects hadn't worked out, and not liking yourself. Because there was a mention, wasn't there, of when you said, Ash, that actually you looked at yourself and didn't like yourself.
Yeah.
And was that in retrospect, was that was what you were feeling, wasn't it, in the first recording, I think. So that to me is sort of a depressive indicator.
Yeah, I mean, I can look at that now and still engage with that feeling. So I think there's an aspect of myself that I can still feel that I have been, that some of the feelings I had in my low are still there. So it's not that they were unwarranted, because I have pursued a career that's been driven by passion rather than thinking about
how to monetize.
I've been selfish, I've been a creative, but now I can say that as negatives, but also acknowledge, but yes, that's why I've also done all these other things. Whereas in this low, it's very much focused on all bad, all criticism, all self-criticism, all self-critique, without understanding that we all have sides to our personalities that are annoying or frustrating.
Absolutely, and that's the key. You lose balance and perspective right at the bottom of it. And then as you're coming out of it, there's that recognition that actually, I'm quite a good person, really. I've added to the sum total of kind of human experience and, not harmed anyone along in the process. And, that you're raising a child and you're doing that successfully. You're achieving all the sort of important stuff in a way, You're
a net positive to the earth, to the universe, maybe. I noticed something that is, and it may be a symptom of Ash, you coming out of your low mood, is that you suddenly felt guilty about the impact that you've had on other people, which, although can't have been very pleasant, might be, and I'd love to hear what Paul thinks about this, might be a sign of recovery, because it's like, right, now I'm sort of assessing what has happened and the impact it has had on people, and I'm not happy about that. I'm not happy about myself. But is that, although not a pleasant one, a sign that maybe things are taking a turn for the positive, Paul?
Well, that's a tricky one, because guilt is one of the symptoms of depression. And I think the question is, how guilty do you feel? And if the guilt is sort of in an understandable kind of reappraisal, so, oh gosh, I put people through that. I think it might be applicable to the high, because Justine is reflecting on it as well, isn't she? She's processing it as well and going, you're much more difficult to handle during the high, but easier to manage during the low.
I think it's re-grasping a sense of empathy. Because I can see now, and I could see at that point, that my decisions were just me going a million miles an hour and everyone keeping up with me or not. And now an empathetic understanding of impact, which in a lower place is hard to handle because you feel like you're an awful person. I felt like I was an awful person for this impact. It reminds me of a story in my 20s, there was a job where I was on a bit of a high, and I think I would have been a bit hard to handle. And for years, I felt guilty towards this one particular person. And years later, I met them, and I apologised. I said, "I'm dreadfully sorry for how I was." And she was like, "What are you?" She couldn't
remember.
Had no impact on her life whatsoever.
Yeah.
I was like, "Well, look, it's years later." She's like, "I don't even know what you're talking about, even back then." So it was huge to me, the impact I'd had on her. Whereas
Such a relief.
Was probably like, just a couple of days of someone being a bit of a dick and get on with your
Yeah.
life. But it had stuck with me for years.
Yeah. So I think the guilt thing is it can become pathological at the real bottom. When you're really depressed, and as you say, it's hard even to go there. I think you still have the compassion. I think there is some empathy in there, and I think there's a lot of humility, but there's a disproportionate amount of self-criticism and even self-loathing, isn't there, that goes along with all that. And it's as you're coming out of everything, as you say, the guilty feelings are still there, but it's easier to process them.
Well, and also easier to communicate them.
Yeah.
Because did I mention it in this episode, or I didn't mention it to you guys, but there were things that went round and round my head for days that when I was better were solvable within minutes or hours. One phone call solved them. But at this point, the inability to communicate and express what's going on in my head, that's where the real pain is, because you can't get rid of the feeling. That's why it sticks in your head. You can't get it out.
It's almost as if the sleepy bits of your depression were just exhaustion, because they call this in the Yoruba tribe in Africa the illness of thoughts. You just can't escape these ruminations to the point where you can't actually solve anything, and it's exhausting. So it's crazy. It is crazy in that way, depression, because
Yes.
you're putting in a lot of mental work to no useful outcome, and you come out of it, and you, as you say, it's sort of, oh, okay, wow. Well, that stuff I was ruminating on for days on end, possibly. I can just do this. Yeah.
There was an interesting point in the second audio as well, which I called frustration, and it said anger had come through, and you were like angry, and then you thought, oh well, at least I've got some energy now. So it was like at least I've got the energy to be angry now, which is a slightly better place to be than being so lethargic that you couldn't even solve the most basic problem without ruminating about it.
Yes. Yes.
There was another thing that came out in the frustration section, as I called it, the second audio. You're talking about Justine being a saint, and showing anxiety signs, as far as I could see. You were talking about out of body feeling, which I think is depersonalization or derealization sort of symptoms, I guess. But the other thing is, and we brought it up last week as well, which was the line between normal and not. Last week we were talking about, yes, you get angry. Everyone gets angry, so that's perfectly normal. Sometimes you work in the evening. Well, everybody wants to work in the evening sometimes, so that's perfectly normal. And it's something you seem to be struggling with maybe a little bit in terms of, oh shit, do I feel super energetic now because I'm going to go have a high? Or do I feel super low now because I'm going to have another low? Or am I simply tired / full of beans? Was that a struggle that you remember?
I think in a way this last episode is more complex because I'm taking such an active role in figuring it out as I go along through these audio journals.
Yeah.
So I'm feeling quite a range of stuff, and I'm exploring it and digging in, and that's quite exhausting as well. But I think that's why, this was much darker than any of my other lows, but much shorter. And so I think there is some positivity in that for other people, that I squared up to it, looked it in the face and dove into it rather than retreating from it, and that got me through it quicker. So
interesting.
Even though it felt harder.
Can I ask, did you, well, I think that probably answers my question. I was going to ask you, in the very depths of your depression, did you still have hope for recovery? Did you feel
Yes,
you were going to
but
come out of it? Yeah.
I think this probably was the closest I came to. Well, I talked about it, didn't I, in this episode about standing on the cliffs.
Yeah.
Wherever it's in. So if I'm repeating myself, I'm pretty sure it is in this. But anyway,
Okay.
that I was going on these walks, I was doing these recordings, and I wanted it to end. So this idea of wanting the world to keep on going, but you to end within it, even though that doesn't mean killing yourself, but this notion of just being able to stop, just end yourself in a way. And I looked that right in the face by standing on top of these cliffs, and because I rock climb, and there's this feeling I really love with rock climbing, which is when you're holding onto the rocks and you've literally got your life in your hands. And the idea that you could let go and you'd hurt yourself very badly, but you're not going to because you're in control. And it was that feeling that I embraced, of just standing there thinking, I have an ability to step forward, which I don't want to do because of all the amazing things in my life. And that feeling of power really pushed me forward. I think
Yeah,
that's the
because
Seems
closest-
to me to be
because
the
you're-
least enjoyable part of rock climbing, frankly.
Yeah, I'm not a fan either. But that is depression in a nutshell, isn't it? You feel powerless. So it's you fighting to regain that a bit of power there, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean,
To
I
prove
remember
to yourself
my
you've still got
lows-
a bit of control.
Yeah, I remember in my lows in my 20s, I remember visualizing suicide. I remember one bit of my mum almost like seeing, like an out of body, seeing myself kind of experience. But this time, actually standing in that point and embrace and really feeling the power of it. That's the closest I've got to that feeling. But it was a very enlivening feeling.
Yeah,
even though
it sounds
the kind
remarkably.
of yeah.
It sounds remarkably
Well-
positive.
Yeah,
in a way.
yeah. But the thing is, right? There's some cliffs, just looking at that line of, yeah. I mean, that sort of in the last episode, I said I was getting tingles from thinking about these kind of waking nightmares. That's giving me tingles of power. It's almost like a big fu to depression. It's like, fuck you, I'm in control of this. And I feel powerful because I'm able, on the most basic of levels. I mean, you use the analogy, Ollie, of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. This is just really figuring out the foundations, really setting them solid, and then moving forward from them. I feel powerful having relived that even. And again, very, very challenging and very easier not to think about that. Easier to retreat from those feelings.
Yeah, God, it's a springboard, isn't it? So I've proved to myself that I've got those basic survival instincts, so I can go on from here and rebuild my life and my aspirations and my higher goals of self-actualization.
Yeah, not even use the word springboard. Not even rebuild. I feel like we're on an audio format, so I'm trying to think how to say this. If I was operating in terms of self-awareness and in my place in the world at 50%, and then I went into depression down to 0. Now I'm at 60. Like, I've come out of this higher than I was. I've taken another step forward in understanding myself.
Yeah.
But
that was the turning point. That was possibly a turning point.
Yeah.
Sounds a bit like
yeah.
it.
Yeah.
It also sounds like something you've got in your locker to draw back on as well, to give you strength. That feeling of power. Fuck you, depression. I'm in charge. You can see the energy building in you. Or at least I can.
You're tempted to use that cliche, aren't you? That what doesn't break you makes you stronger.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. As I say that out loud, and again, this is adding value to these episodes because it's something I hadn't considered when I talked to Pete. I think there is an opportunity, but also a challenge of me bringing Justine along on that journey as well. Because in such a relatively small period of time, where are we now? We're July, and this sort of started in February. I feel like I've leapt to a destination I couldn't have imagined. At the same time, my partner has been through an incredibly challenging time and is, I think, in a way, recovering from that, like a kind of post-traumatic stress.
Yeah.
And my feeling in this really positive way, I think, is actually causing some challenges now again. And I think that's maybe one of the things for carers of people who have bipolar or depression is is trying to synchronize that up. I think.
Well,
I
this
realised this was challenging.
monitoring, it's only the post-traumatic stress thing. This one of the symptoms is vigilance, isn't it? It's sort of a heightened vigilance for the thing that the trigger for your trauma. So this sort of a monitoring that you were saying, in a way. I mean, you weren't saying it was irritating. You were just saying you felt uncomfortable about it because you know that it's not a symptom of you having an episode. It's just normal Ash having a reaction to life events. But you can kind of understand how Justine's just a little bit hypervigilant for any sign you might be coming ill again. And I guess it's going to take some weeks and months for her to come out of that and feel more reassured because you're going forward with stability, and achieving things.
And also the transformation.
Mm.
Right. If we, I mean, previously I'd have thought, oh God, I've have an episode and this is just wasting my time and I feel awful, and then I'm out of it. Okay, I can carry on. My experience now is like I've been on some retreat. I've sort of disappeared onto this retreat of my own brain and come out of it this sort of transformed person. That must be quite weird for my partner.
Yeah.
Who's like, Jesus Christ, he was here, that was really hard work, then he was unable to do anything, and now so she's dealing with 3 different states of Ash, whereas for me I've sort of come through something to a sort of
It's a very good point. I've never really thought about this before. I mean, obviously I've thought about the people who are close to those suffering, but I've never really thought about it in post-traumatic terms. But of course, unlike a physical illness where you're given the all clear or the cast comes off your broken leg, you don't think, oh my God, what would happen if he broke his leg again? Oh my God, he's walking, he might fall over and break his leg. You just don't have those fears. Whereas with something as complex and potentially debilitating and frightening as what you went through, you would have those signals, and or you would look out for those signals, and it makes me realise that actually for the people closest to you, i.e. your partner in this case, their wife, I should say, they need some attention as well, and maybe not even just from you,
Absolutely.
But I've never really thought about it that way. And I guess, Paul, you come across this all the time, where the people left behind, even when the person has bounced out of an episode like Ashley has with some learnings, he almost as if he's glad he had the episode. For the people left behind, having gone through that with someone they love, it's a bit frightening, isn't it, to think it might happen again, because they don't fully understand it.
It is, and you always try to check that the carers are okay, that they are seeking help if they need to, and it should be independent help, of course, and there are charities out there. There's SANE, which is an organisation where carers of people with mental health problems can share their stories. So, yeah. But it's an interesting one for Justine to adjust to in the third Ash, isn't it? That's really interesting. So it's the Ash compared to...
The third Ash. I love that. It's a great title.
So not manic Ash, not depressive Ash, or not pre-mania Ash either. It's Ash with his new insights, who's, I reckon, a little bit stronger, a little bit carrying away a little bit more self-knowledge, bit more able to put things in perspective, perhaps. But yeah, so we'll tease out all these different themes, I guess, in the next few episodes.
I think so. I think the next one is sort of conclusions, and it's a very upbeat, and we get a chance to listen to some of Ash's art, which was created when he was in his time, which I see even more impressive than I thought it would be. I said, who did the vocal on that one? And, Ash just replied simply, guilty. I was like, my God, the boy can sing as well.
Just absolute noise and wailing.
It's primordial screaming of the most entertaining kind. No, we'll wait and see next week. No, it is rather good. Ash, you might be regretting now letting us into your mind, but I'm very glad you did. It was a lovely, upbeat episode. Really interesting one as well. I'm particularly thinking now about the people affected by people who go through these things. But next week, conclusions, thoughts, processing, and a performance, in fact, of some of the creative work that Ash did during this period. In the meantime, gentlemen, thank you. Go and have your pint. I'm sure it'll be delicious. And we'll see you again next week. Bye for now.
Bye for now.